Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumia Kareer. Then let's put the spotlight on the Indian subcontinent then. Well, Bangladesh and Pakistan in particular, which are seeing destabilizing conditions. Well, in Bangladesh, the ISKCON Foundation has been called a religious fundamentalist group. The interim government, which came to power after the ouster of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, has called it is examining ISKCON. In fact, this is coming in after protests against Hindus have escalated over the arrest of Hindu priest Chinmoy Krishnadas on Monday. In fact, the Hindu community has been protesting and demanding for stronger laws to protect the community in the country. In fact, just today, MOS External Affairs Kirti Vardhan Singh has called upon Bangladesh to ensure the safety and security of Hindus and all minorities and their places of worship. But the Bangladesh Foreign Ministry, however, has called this as India's interference in its quote-unquote internal affairs. But let's listen into what this ISKCON India official has said in response to the kind of atrocities that are being seen, and then we'll move on to what's unfolding in Pakistan.
Chinmoy Krishnadas ji, who is a former member of ISKCON and a spokesperson of the Sanatan Jagran Manch, he has been asking for some that which all the Hindus and all the Hindu organizations of Bangladesh have been asking in a very peaceful way. That is that the safety of Hindus should be ensured and the temples, the places of worship, they should be protected, and those who are perpetrators of the crime of violence, of inciting violence, they should be charged and punished as per the law.
Besides Bangladesh, Pakistan also has been seeing some serious turmoil, with supporters of former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan defying government lockdowns to demand the release of jailed Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or PTI chief. In fact, let's take these issues up with our guest tonight, former Ambassador Veena Sikri, who's joining us live on the show. Thank you very much, Ms. Sikri, for joining us. Now, a couple of months back when we spoke, when the interim government of Muhammad Yunus was coming to power, it was the same scenes that were playing out, and now you really have radicals chanting, "We will peel the skins of ISKCON devotees." Is Bangladesh a failed state when it comes to how it treats minorities? And ma'am, is the hate for Awami League translating into hate for Hindus in the country?
Well, first of all, I must say that what is happening today is really a sharp deterioration from a process which began on the 5th of August itself, the day when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left the country. At that time, the very first target of the attack were the Hindu, Buddhist and Christian minorities of Bangladesh. And at that time, if you recall, our Prime Minister had even written to Professor Muhammad Yunus about it, and later Professor Muhammad Yunus had telephoned our Prime Minister. So obviously it has been in the forefront of the attention of the eyes of the world, have been focused on the Bangladesh interim government's treatment of its minorities. But the process has deteriorated, as I said, from those first attacks on homes and places of business and places of worship and killings and lootings. It came on to attacks on economic livelihood. It came on to attacks on places of worship. The Durga Puja, there were, even the idol of the Jeshureshwari temple was stolen during the Durga Puja. Mandaps were attacked, and so on. And now this was really the culmination, because we had this Samalita Sanatani Jagran Jyoth led by Chinmoy Prabhu, which had taken up a 8-point demand with the government of Bangladesh, asking for a law to protect minorities, a ministry to protect minorities, asking for action to be taken against those who had perpetrated this violence and the killing on the minorities. All this is a very simple demand. But instead of protecting the people who are making the demand, they have arrested Chinmoy Prabhu, and charged him with sedition. And even today, people are saying that the sedition charge is fake because he didn't have the flag of Bangladesh in the procession. It was just, a kind of a depiction. So even people from Bangladesh are talking like that. And, it's really an indication that they're not following the constitution of Bangladesh, which has democracy and secularism at its core.
Absolutely. But ma'am, when you go back to, Ma'am, when you go back to what Muhammad Yunus had back then said, when these protests first start, emanating out of the kind of hate that we were seeing in Bangladesh against Hindus, Muhammad Yunus had downplayed the atrocities against Hindus, in one of his interviews. In fact, so one wonders whether he will still keep declining the kind of, rampage that's going on in the country. How is violence against Hindus and minorities in the country going unabated, especially when foreign leaders like Donald Trump has condemned it? And what's causing these kind of crimes to go, to continue in the country and with such impunity?
Yes, actually, it is a great surprise because everybody had thought that the assurances that Professor Mohammed Yunus made and what he'd been saying to the international community, that he would be able to live up to it and he would be able to follow up on it and make sure that they were implemented. But actually, he does not seem to be in control. And really, it's the Jamaat-e-Islami, it's the Islamist forces, it's the Jamaat-e-Islami, it's the Hizb ut-Tahrir. They are the ones who are making these demands. I mean, for example, the student leaders, I mean, the ones who are supposed to have, brought in this regime change on the face of it, people like Hasnat Abdullah and Sarjis Alam, they made the demand to ban ISKCON. And why? Why is the banning ISKCON? In fact, Chinmoy Prabhu is a former member of ISKCON. He's a Bhakt, all right, but he's a former member. So just like that. And then Attorney General goes to court with the demand. And then today the court says, no, we can't do it. If you want to take an executive decision, you do it, but we are not going to do this. This is not what we have to do. So, it's really seems to be that the control is not in the hand of either the chief advisor or even many of the advisors. But you do have in the government as advisors, you do have members of the Islami Andolan Bangladesh, head of the Hifazat-e-Islam, and even Mahfuz Alam, who is a Hizb ut-Tahrir person,
Right,
according to many, many people who have written about it. So it really seems to be
right,
that these forces are taking over
right,
and they are coming into play, and it is very worrisome because this is
right,
totally against what the constitution of Bangladesh talks
right.
about.
Absolutely, ma'am. And when Muhammad Yunus had taken over as caretaker, controller of the country, he had stated that democracy will be restored, and of course, this is another lifeline for the country. Back then, he had also stated, or perhaps the reason why he was brought in as the caretaker leader of the country was to ensure that elections in Bangladesh would happen, and Muhammad Yunus was supposed to be the caretaker leader back then. But given the situation that we're seeing right now, it's completely out of his hand. Then what's the future of the Bangladeshi government that you foresee? What's going to happen in Bangladesh, and for how long do you expect this situation to continue?
Well, you're right. The interim government, or used to be the caretaker government as designated in the previous constitution, really their job is only to be there for 90 days and to hold free and fair elections and hand over the government to the free and fair elections. This question of reforms, this has all come a new thing, a new demand. All the leftist parties, they want constitutional reform, they want electoral reform, financial reform, economic reform, and various commissions have been set up. But that's not the role of the interim government. No interim government is authorized to take decisions on such vital areas as the kind of reforms being talked about. And this very interim government has sworn its allegiance to the present constitution of Bangladesh. And now the moment they come in, they're talking about changing the constitution. So while, that has cast a lot of doubt on the very constitutionality of this government. I mean, is it like a legally constituted government? So there are a lot of question marks, a lot of swirling ideas in the wind, which are causing a lot of confusion. And in my view, the best would be to head for the elections as soon as possible and to have inclusive, free and fair elections. All parties should be asked to participate. In
So,
fact,
ma'am,
at one point
what
when
do these violent elements want? What is the end goal?
well, the violent elements, the Jamaat Islami, Hizb ut-Tahrir, they want a caliphate. They want Islamic law. They want Sharia law. The Hifazat Islam, that is their role to make sure that Sharia law prevails. But when you have 8% and more minorities in the country, you can't. And your constitution has always promised, the democracy and secularism and nationalism and social justice. So that is why there's a lot of chaos. And many of the demands being made by some of the members of Jamaat-e-Islami and others, they're not acceptable to the people. Even the demand for changing the constitution, changing the national flag, changing the national anthem, we saw a very silent kind of protest among the people for that, and many people are now saying it was better earlier. They're really saying that under Sheikh Hasina, it was better because now this government is doing exactly what they themselves are accusing former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of doing. So this is a very difficult situation. There is no
Right,
law and order because there is no police. And the army has been given
right,
magistracy power. The army has been given police powers,
absolutely.
but they're still not able to
And
maintain law and
abject
order.
anarchy.
Yes,
Right,
absolutely. I think that's the right word.
right, right, ma'am. So the government of India, yeah. Hmm. Right. 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 Right.
And
Right. 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 Yeah.
No, well,
And the government of India, ma'am, has, today as well expressed its concerns. We do remember that the Prime Minister had a couple of months back spoken to Mohammed Yunus. He'd also spoken to the US dispensation back then as well. And today in Parliament, those concerns have been raised once again. In fact, India has said that it is Bangladesh's primary responsibility to protect minorities. But what do you think India can do diplomatically? Is India, first of all, escalating this situation seriously enough, this concern and this issue seriously enough? And what are the options that India has now?
Well, I think right from the very beginning, in August itself, our government had said we are prepared to talk to the interim government. We want to continue the good relations with Bangladesh. We want to continue all the areas of cooperation, connectivity, trade that had been worked out in such detail over the last 15 years when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was in power. And I think that we are very serious about that. We are very sincere about that. But certainly, the government is right in saying that it is the primary responsibility of the government of Bangladesh, the interim government, to look after law and order and look after these concerns, very real concerns of the population who are saying that they're being attacked and killed and who are really living in fear of their lives. And that is it's a message to the government of Bangladesh that, look, you have to get your act together, bring in law and order, because otherwise it will be a kind of civil war, and the amazing part is that this time we have seen, unlike in previous occasions when there are threats, many people have left and come to India, but this time we've seen the younger generation among the minorities, they're determined to stay on. They're saying we are going to be here, we are citizens of this country, we will. So that is a great change.
Absolutely.
And I think the government of Bangladesh will look to it. Yeah.
Right. Ma'am, when you say that, the process of democracy or democratic processes have to be respected in Bangladesh is something that, the government of Bangladesh had stated. But Bangladesh now says that this is their internal matter. Now, the question is, what kind of support can India expect from Trump 2.0 administration? And how consequential is, Trump's coming back going to be for India's ties with Bangladesh, and of course with Bangladesh in the picture, because it's no secret that Democrats had openly quoted Yunus, whose links with key Democrats were pretty visible during his recent visit to the United States.
Absolutely, and not only that, these ties between Professor Mohammed Yunus and the Clinton administration, they are old. Even 2007, I must tell you, right way back, when I was High Commissioner there till 2006, and at that time in 2007 there was an army takeover, and they tried to bring in Mohammed Yunus as head of the caretaker government, and he said he was going to form a political party, but it never worked because there was no support for that. But he had the full support of the Democratic administration, and it was a very difficult time, but still it didn't work. So this time it's like almost Yunus 2, where he has come back again as chief advisor, and he even tried to become president, but he wants to have complete control in Bangladesh, but he's not able to bring it about. That is why Trump had to say quite clearly that there is chaos in Bangladesh and that the attacks on the Hindus and Christians are barbaric. So I think you can read from that when Trump too comes into power, he's going to attach importance to these. He has always been very against Islamist administrations, very much against them, whether it is Bangladesh or Pakistan. He's against Islamism, and he's very much against terrorism.
So, ma'am, when you say that he's going to attach importance to this, when you say, apologies, I have to interject because we're completely running out of time. So when you say that there's going to be a focus on Bangladesh, what kind of focus do you expect Trump, to give to Bangladesh with respect to India, and what do you think his policy will be for the country?
Well, again, I think he is going to have a South Asia focus. Last time he did have a South Asia focus. He did have a concern about China focus, and he did bring in the revival of Quad. So, I mean, it shows his focus on the India-Pacific, his focus on security in the India-Pacific, maritime security. Now, Bangladesh has a role to play in all of this. And certainly, even the Bangladesh government under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had brought out a very good India-Pacific outlook paper. And they themselves understand that their future prosperity and democracy and growing economic strength depends on the Indo-Pacific. So, I think that that realization was there earlier. I hope that now when Trump comes back, he will be able to bring it in. But he's not going to support Islamism. He's not going to support terrorism. I don't think he's going to support this kind of chaos. He's going to ask for early elections. I think that's the best that can happen, is for Bangladesh to have early elections. And maybe by the middle of next year, maybe 4 or 5 months, have elections. And then free, fair and inclusive. and then let us see who wins, and they can look at all the reforms. The newly elected government
Okay.
can look at all the reforms, and I think that Trump will definitely be in favor of a peaceful South Asia, a good neighborly South Asia, an integrated South Asia with economic growth and development
Absolutely.
for all. And this is the biggest strength of South Asia. And he's going to take action on China,
Absolutely.
on trade, on tariffs. So all this is going to hit China's presence in the developing countries as well.
Right. Right. Right, right, absolutely, ma'am. And when you talk about Donald Trump and in context of what's happening in Bangladesh with respect to Hindus, he stated, in fact, during his campaigning, one of his campaigning speeches as well, that it's a shame that Joe Biden hasn't really taken cognizance of the situation, and he's not really done nothing for the interests of Hindus in the United States. And he did, criticize the kind of violence that was being seen at that point in time. But let me get in your last question on what's unfolding in Pakistan. Your final thoughts on what will Trump's policy on Pakistan will be, because that's also seeing destabilizing conditions and protests now being led to demand the release of Imran Khan.
Yes, I think the situation in Pakistan is very concerning, and this is a direct consequence of the fact that the army has taken more powers to itself, and they are even more determined now to keep Imran Khan out. And of course, Imran Khan has, they think that he has this huge thing against the United States because he thought the United States is the one that destabilized his government. But I think that President Trump will also be keen on ensuring that there is not this kind of unrest, this kind of turmoil, this kind of economic chaos in Pakistan. This also ceases, and they should have come back to normalcy. They must have a normal government, and the government must prove its worth, and the government must not focus on just keeping Imran Khan in jail, and then all the supporters of Imran Khan, having them with stun grenades and tear gas and all kinds. The situation has been terrible in
Right.
Pakistan, and there's no progress at all on the economic front.
Right.
So I think that President Trump will certainly want stability in South Asia, and once again he will focus on no Islamism and no terrorism. I think these are going to be, and he is going to offer in exchange good trade relations. Trade can bring your economies up.
Right.
Bangladesh has a lot to offer in terms of
Right.
trade, but their economy is in a mess right now.
Right.
Pakistan also can have something to offer in trade, but the economy is in a mess.
Absolutely.
So are they willing to get back to economic growth? Are they willing to give up Islamism,
Absolutely.
terrorism, and talk about regional
Right.
integration? So I do think that President Trump will look at it, because South Asia is a very important region, and even if you look at President Trump's interest in China, what he's going to talk about there, his interest in Quad, it all builds up to
Right.
having a peaceful, democratic, and stable South Asia. This is very important for President Trump, and he's going to do his best to get it about. Of course, he has his trade mechanisms, he has the eyes on trade, he's going to impose tariffs on China, that's going to affect the economy.
Right.
All this
Right.
is there. And he's against, he's
Right.
against China because of
Right.
drugs and because of their trade. And he's against,
Absolutely, ma'am.
countries like Mexico and Canada because of
Absolutely. And
drug smuggling and human trafficking. So all of these are activities in which Pakistan plays a very
Right.
big role. So
Right, and
they're going
those-
to be, I think, at the short end of the stick.
absolutely. Right. So a stable South Asia is something that the Trump administration will be looking at. We'll have to see what kind of policy interventions does the Trump 2.0 administration comes up with. On that note, thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us this evening on ET Now and discussing that big story. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to step into a quick break, but lots more coming up on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.